You've got an awesome invention idea, but it's really difficult to know what to do next because, if you do the wrong thing, you can waste tons of money, or what you can do is you can shoot yourself in the foot so that your business is gonna fail before it's even started. Now, in my regular practice, I work with tons of startups, whether they be garage inventors, emerging companies, more developed startups, and also Fortune 100 companies. But when it comes to individuals or groups of people who are doing startups, I see a lot of folks and I see them make mistakes and I see what works. And I see what makes good founders and I see what makes good ideas. And I see the steps that people take correctly in order to get their ideas off the ground. In the same way, I've seen people do things the wrong way, take the wrong steps, and lose their patent rights, waste a ton of money, or even pursue an idea that really doesn't make any sense. And so that's why it's important to understand the best steps to take with your invention idea. So the first thing to do is to determine if the idea is actually going to be a good product or business. And let me kind of explain what I mean by that. So I deal with a lot of people all the time. They come to me with really cool ideas. They're clever, they're interesting, but clever and interesting doesn't mean that something is going to be a good product or going to be a good business or service. It has to be something that there's going to be a sufficient number of people who are going to want to buy it at a price that you can produce it at. And it's surprising how many people don't go and do the analysis to determine whether their idea will actually be a good product or whether it will be an actual good service or business. A lot of people don't take that step. They think that just because something is clever, because it's interesting, because they thought of it, it's going to naturally turn into a great product. And a lot of times that's not true. I mean, a lot of times, honestly, I've seen things that, objectively are really stupid ideas, but they're great business products and make a ton of money. That being said, I've seen a lot of people with, like I said, interesting products, but at the same time, they don't really make good businesses. It's not something people can actually make money off of. So how do you figure out whether your idea is actually going to be a good business or product? Well, you got to do some research into the market and potential customers. So when it comes to the market, you have to figure out what other products or services are out there that are like yours. What other competitors are there? How does your product fit into that in terms of being competitive? Is it something that's faster? Is it smaller? Is it cheaper? What is it that makes your product better than somebody else's? And don't say that there's no one else out there like you or your product. That is absolutely not true. There's always going to be someone or something that is going to be similar to what you're doing. So go out there and do some research. I mean, it can be free. You don't have to spend money on this. Do some Google searching. Look around on Amazon. Find other products or companies that are doing something similar to what you're doing. Figure out what the market landscape is like. That's going to be the first step. And along with knowing what the market is like in terms of competitors, you want to know who the customers are, and specifically, who are your customers going to be? And again, the answer is not everybody. No, not everybody is going to buy your product. You need to think about a focused sort of person. Create this theoretical person in your mind, maybe even write a little profile of maybe one or two people who are sort of the target demographic for your product. Figure out who these people are. That's going to be essential to determining how big of a market it is. And then, once you figure that out, try to talk to those people. Try to figure out what they really need, whether they'd be really interested in something like this, how much they might pay for it. And one of the things that I like to use as a litmus test is this product going to be a vitamin or a painkiller? And what I mean by that is it something that's good to have? Vitamins kind of make you feel better. It's not absolutely essential, but a painkiller is something that is absolutely essential and really important to somebody. It's something that solves a real problem, and they're going to be hurting if they don't have that. Is your product just something that's nice to have? Is it a novelty? Or is it something that people absolutely have to have because it solves a really important issue that they have? That's something to consider too when it comes to customers. And that's why it's important to talk to people. You're going to be thinking about things, sort of generally about, hey, this is a great idea, it's interesting. But from a customer's perspective, they're going to be thinking about things very practically. It's like, hey, does this help me in a way that I would pay whatever this thing costs? And a lot of times I think you'd be surprised by that. So it's important to talk to customers, and you have to identify who those customers are before you can go talk to those folks and figure out what their needs really are. I mean, it's surprising how many people don't do this. I see a lot of people who, spend all this time building companies, doing R&D, and just really don't even know the market. They don't know the customers, they don't know the competitors, and they're sort of inventing and building a company in a vacuum, and that's a mistake. So that's why doing market research, including figuring who your customers are, is the first thing you want to do with your invention idea. So the next step after you've sort of figured out what the market is and who the customers are is to determine how you're going to be able to build a prototype or a minimal viable product, which is sometimes called an MVP. And let me explain what those two things are. So a prototype, usually it can be somewhere from something that's really, really crude to something that is, something that may be close to, if not potentially ready to actually sell to people. And it's really important to build a prototype, whether it be, something like sketches or, a storyboard of how something's going to work. And ideally, if it's a physical product, try to build a mock-up of that, even if it's something that's small, even if it's something that's totally janky. Like if it's a basic product, go to your garage and get some cardboard, or go to Home Depot and get some wood and build something that's really basic. Again, that's a big thing that I notice with people, and that's a big mistake, is they have this interesting idea and it's really important. They start, maybe filing patent applications or trying to build a business, but they've never really tried to build the thing that they're trying to do. I mean, so for physical products, yeah, you should try to build even a really rudimentary version of what your product is going to be, because there's so much to be learned by actually building the product. I can't tell you how many times people say, oh, I've done this on paper, I thought about it, and it's going to be really easy to do, and I don't need to do that. But once they actually have to build the product, or once they actually are having to, make the thing so it can be sold, they realize, oh my gosh, this product should be really different. It should have these other things, or it should be simpler. And there's just so much that goes on in developing the physical thing that it's, you learn a lot from that. So be sure to go through that step. Now for things like, say, software or something, maybe make a mock-up of how things would look. A lot of times you can make a prototype where you can have fake data on your iPhone, if it's a cell phone app, and where you can, sort of generally get a sense of how things work. That is really important to do. So even for things that are non-physical, try to build some sort of basic prototype. So for a MVP, or a minimal viable product, that's going to be the minimal product that you can actually take to market. And it's important to realize that this is the minimal thing. What is the minimal stuff that you can do to get a product and be able to get it to market? Because what a lot of people have trouble with is that they want to have all the bells and whistles, they want to have all these functionalities, but it's important to just get to market and get it in front of customers and have the early adopters look at it and try it, so you can then maybe improve on it. Maybe you can then add different functionalities in different generations. You can add the different variations on things later on. It's usually best to go into market as early as possible with your MVP, or a minimal viable product. Now, where I started this list was, you need to figure out how you're going to be able to build these things, and it depends on the product. If it's something that's really simple, maybe you can go to your garage and you can build a prototype right now, right? Maybe it's really easy, or maybe it's something that's really complex. Maybe it's outside of your skill set. Like, if you're not a software engineer and you came up with an idea for software or an app, maybe you're not able to do that yourself. Maybe you're going to need some help. So you need to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to sort of create a prototype? Who do I need to find? How much is that going to cost? Similarly, if you're going to be able to get to a minimal viable product, well, how is that going to happen, right? So if it's, say, software again, who are you going to need to talk to actually have something that's working? If you don't have any experience in those things, well, who are the people you need to talk to? Or if it's a physical product, well, who do you need to talk to in order to actually make a product that can be mass manufactured, right? So, and how much is that going to cost? You need to think about those things, because regardless of what your business plan is, how you're going to be making money, which we'll talk about in the next step, you're going to have to likely do a prototype, and you're likely going to have to do a minimal viable product depending on what course you're going to take. So you at least need to figure out how that's possible. If you're the kind of person who can do this, if you have those skills, awesome. That's a lot easier, and that's something that makes it a lot easier to build a company or a startup, is when you have the ability to build the product. even when it's something that's really simple or when it's something that's complex, having that ability is great. And it helps you understand what you really need to do to get to that step. Whether it's, hey, I need to go to Home Depot and buy some stuff and craft a prototype, or, well, hey, I really need to spend a lot of money. Even a basic prototype is going to cost $100,000 because it's, expensive and, it's a complex thing. You need to figure that out before you then take the next step. Now, once you've figured out how you would make a prototype or minimal viable product, the next thing you're going to do is kind of figure out how you're going to monetize this thing. Okay, so there's two main ways to do that. One is to either sell the idea or license the idea, or to produce it yourself. So with selling or licensing the idea, what you can do is you can actually sell or license the idea to someone else, and they'll be the ones who take all the time to turn the idea into an actual product. Or maybe if you actually have a product already, then they can take the work that you've done and they can run with it, and maybe they can get better distribution, things like that. But what you can do, is not be doing things yourselves. You can have another company and get royalties, or maybe get a lump sum payment initially for the idea instead of actually having to do it yourself. That's one option. Alternatively, you can make this thing yourself. You can make the product, you can sell the service to people. That's a viable option as well. And you really want to figure out which one of these things you want to do. I mean, it's possible that you could try to do both. For instance, you're more likely to license or sell an idea if you've actually proved the concept and actually gotten some sales. A good example is, if you can prove a concept locally, it'll be a lot easier to sell the idea to a national chain because they know, hey, we can easily scale this up. We know that you have a good proof of concept in your local area, but we know that if we take it national or globally, we're going to be able to make a lot of money because that's going to translate into X amount of sales throughout the whole United States or globally. So that can be helpful. You may want to think about potentially doing both, but some people say, hey, I only want to make this product myself. This is not something that I want to license or sell. And other people say, hey, I don't want to have to make this thing myself. Maybe it's too difficult, or that's not really their business plan. They want to either sell or license the idea. And it's important to figure that out because that's going to lead you into the next step. So if you're thinking you want to license or sell the idea, you're going to need to develop it enough so that you can pitch it to potential buyers or licensees. That's going to be really important. And that's a bit out of the scope of this video. I always suggest that people read Stephen Key's book, One Simple Idea. That gives you all the information you need to know about taking a relatively simple idea and then packaging it so you can do a pitch for people so you can sell or license your idea. That's a good way to go. So that's a great resource for relatively simple ideas. But for things that are more complex, those ideas tend to be pretty difficult to sell or license. And I'll give you an example. So people come to me a lot and they say, hey, I have this idea for some software or for an app, and I want to approach Google and have them buy my idea. That tends to be pretty difficult because unless the person can actually make it themselves, a lot of times, the value is in the execution of the idea. And someone like Google or, a big company like that, they're usually not going to want to talk to individuals who just have an idea. They're able to come up with ideas all the time, and it's all about the execution that makes it difficult. But not to say that it's impossible to sell or license those ideas. But with those, especially if you can't do a prototype really easy and quickly, you need to figure out how you're going to be able to put a prototype together so you can actually pitch to folks like that. And a lot of times it's going to be something that's going to be complex. If you don't have the skills yourself, maybe you're going to have to find investors who are going to be able to get you to the prototype stage and be able to get to the point where you can actually have something that's going to be pitchable. So that's why it's important to understand what is it going to take to get you to a prototype. And for things that are really complex, you might realize, hey, maybe this isn't a great business plan when I have to spend a ton of money because I can't do it myself, or it's so complex that I would need a team of people even if I could do some of it myself. Maybe this isn't a great idea if I have to spend a ton of money and there's a lot of risk related to just creating a prototype so I can go and pitch it to a company. That's certainly something to consider when it comes to wanting to pitch an idea. Now, if you decide you want to produce this product yourself, you'll want to decide whether you want to make a prototype first, which can be extremely important and helpful, or if you just want to skip to creating a minimal viable product. And it really depends on the type of product that it is. For certain things, it's really good to prototype things because you really learn about the product and really understand it a lot better so that then you can develop the actual commercial product. And it's good to sort of take it in a multi-step sort of approach. Other times, if it's something that's really simple and maybe if you know the market really well, you can just jump to creating the minimal viable product. Now for simple ideas, that may be really easy. You may be able to create a prototype yourself, like I said, just with stuff you have in your garage or something, or going to Home Depot and getting some wood and cobbling something together, and that's great, right? It may be easy to then parlay that into a minimal viable product, but for some things, it could be expensive even to create a prototype of something. Maybe it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get to the basic prototype stage, which will be a proof of concept that then will get you investors to get you to the next stage, which may cost millions of dollars. It depends on what the product is, but you want to understand that before you get into things. And if say you need a ton of money to get to a minimal viable product, you may need to first do a prototype and figure out how much that's going to cost. Can you do that yourself to get investors to get to the MVP step? Or do you need to get investors just to get a prototype to then get you to get investors who are going to get you to the MVP step? It's important to understand how you're going to get there and how you're going to get money to fund that, or if you're going to be able to do that yourself. So now that you've done your market research and figured out that your idea will actually make a good product or business, and now that you've figured out how you're going to be able to build a prototype or a minimal viable product and kind of figured out what it's going to take to get you to that step, now is the point where you're going to want to think about patent protection. You don't necessarily want to run out and file patent applications immediately. What you want to wait for is before you start making public disclosures, public uses, or offers for sale, or before you start approaching investors. And let me tell you why that is. So first, if you start making public disclosures, public uses, or offers for sale, patent rights start to be forfeited when you start doing those things. So it's important to file typically a provisional patent application before you start doing those things so you don't forfeit patent rights. It's going to be important to make sure that you can still patent the things and you don't want to accidentally lose your rights to stuff. Even though talking to investors doesn't necessarily forfeit patent rights, that's the best way to get the attention of investors. So for instance, you can go into an investor meeting and not have to be cagey and not tell them about what the idea is. Investors hate that. They also hate it when you ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. A lot of times they're going to refuse to sign and they're going to peg you as a newbie and not want to work with you. It's a lot better to go in and say, hey, here's our patent pending technology. Here's what we have. We'll tell you everything about it because everything is protected by our patent application. We have an early filing date, before we met with you, so we have proof that we did something before this. That's the more powerful position to be in. And notice that this is going to be like the fourth step. Filing a patent application is not the first or second or third thing that you do. There's a lot of work that you want to do before you file a patent application. And again, that's a big mistake that I see a lot of people make. And you would think that because I'm a patent attorney, I would say, hey, file patent applications as soon as possible. But from a business perspective, that makes absolutely no sense. And sure, there's absolutely no requirement to have a prototype to file a patent application. You just need to be able to describe the invention in sufficient detail such that your average person in the field could make and use the invention. And yeah, you can get protection on that. And so yeah, prototypes are not required, but it is really smart to do your due diligence, figure out the market, do a prototype, and be ready to start actually approaching investors or selling the product, or say doing a Kickstarter, raising money publicly. That's the best time to actually start doing patent applications. Again, like I said, that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is they think the first thing you want to do is file a patent application when that's actually far down the road. You want to spend as little money as possible up until you absolutely have to. And filing a patent application is going to cost you money, especially if you're going to do it right. And you want to know that it's going to be a viable business and that this is going to be something that you're going to be able to do and really know what the next steps are and be ready to take those next steps, which, like I said, it's going to be public disclosures, public uses, or offers for sale because you want to not forfeit patent rights, or if you're going to be approaching investors. So when it comes to public disclosures, public use, or offers for sale, that's going to be, let's say you're going to go to a trade show and show people, or if you're going to start a Kickstarter campaign that's going to disclose the invention, or you're going to start talking to people publicly about the invention, you would want to file a patent application. That's similar to public uses. If the invention is going to be used in public, you're going to want to file a patent application first. And then there's offers for sale. And note that it's just offers for sale. If the product is offered for sale, doesn't matter whether it's public or private, and it doesn't matter whether a sale actually occurs, that can forfeit patent rights as well. So if you got some value out of this video, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more on patents and startups. Thanks for watching. Be sure to comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thanks.